The world is witnessing yet another unexpected twist in global geopolitics. The reclusive nation of North Korea has reportedly sent troops to support and defend Burkina Faso's revolutionary leader, Captain Ibrahim Traoré. This unprecedented alliance has shocked international observers, ignited speculation across the African continent, and raised alarms in Western capitals. North Korea, that most notorious of isolated militaristic and military-first states, has long existed outside the bounds of international norms. Even for Pyongyang, however, sending troops to a West African nation is not typical behavior, especially when the leader in question, Ibrahim Traoré, is arguably the most anti-Western current occupant of the office on the African continent. It is symbolic, it is strategic, and it is potentially destabilizing. But how did this strange alliance come about? Why would North Korea, thousands of miles away and suffering its own economic and political marginalization, send troops to defend a president in Burkina Faso? And what does it portend for the changing balance of power in Africa, Western declinism, and the new geopolitics? To understand this situation, we need to study the past of the two parties, Captain Ibrahim Traoré and North Korea, along with how international events have led them into this unlikely partnership. Let us start with Captain Ibrahim Traoré. The new revolutionary burst onto the world stage in 2022 when he staged a successful coup d'état against Burkina Faso's former military regime. The nation, already experiencing decades of volatility, terror, and graft, needed a change in leadership. Traoré, being a charming and enterprising leader, promised to keep away entirely from the previous regime. He taught persuasively on sovereignty, African unity, and the removal of neo-colonial occupation, particularly French occupation, from Burkina Faso. He was part of a new wave of Pan-African leaders and intellectuals who were redefining the colonial past and searching for a new future for Africa, free of Western dominance. Within months, Traoré pushed the French forces out of the country, cut off military ties to Paris, and began forging ties with new allies: Russia, Iran, China, and now North Korea. His government reprioritized national priorities, redirected aid away from Western-aligned NGOs, and insisted on the nationalization of resources. Those actions labeled him as a lightning rod to Western media as an authoritarian populist, but he was labeled as a hero for millions in Africa. And then let us look at North Korea. Since its establishment in 1948, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, DPRK, has been a thorn in the side of Western powers, and specifically, the United States. It has survived war, famine, and crippling sanctions. Its ruling circles, from Kim Il-sung to Kim Jong-un, have held on to power through firm internal control, nationalist ideology, and a robust military institution. North Korea was even in isolation, a big believer in strategic alignments, specifically countries of similar anti-West orientation. It has been a supporter of African revolutionary movements at one time or another. During the Cold War, Pyongyang provided military advisors, arms, and finance to countries like Angola, Mozambique, and Zimbabwe. These were ideology and pragmatism in action. North Korea saw in Africa a vast range of potential allies, natural resources, and global influence. Flash forward to the present, and those Cold War connections are being reignited. While young people in Africa are calling for decolonization and freedom from Western powers, North Korea is stepping up as a friend, ally, and symbol of resistance. It comes as no surprise that Pyongyang would find a natural ally in Ibrahim Traoré. A series of unverified intelligence leaks and local media accounts reported that North Korean military advisors appeared in Burkina Faso this year. There were no symbolic emissaries. They arrived with equipment, training, and, most significantly, soldiers. Satellite images verify the presence of a heavily fortified military base on the outskirts of the capital city of Ouagadougou. Local sources report the base is being run jointly by Burkina Faso and North Korean soldiers. Why does it matter? because it is the first officially documented deployment of North Korean troops in West Africa during the 21st century. It's a new phase of World War, where anti-West nations are no longer acting unilaterally, but are beginning to coordinate their resistance in important, tangible ways. And it's not merely Traoré getting military support, it's symbolic. Having North Korea as a friend is contrary to the international order. It's a message sent to France, the United States, and their allies. Burkina Faso will not be threatened. It will choose its fate, even if that means appealing to the most sanctioned nation in the world. To North Korea, too, the benefits are obvious. By backing Traoré, Pyongyang can project its image, show its might abroad, and send Washington a message that it possesses a global reach capacity. Its politics also. North Korean troops based in Burkina Faso are a message to friends like Russia and China that North Korea is a force to be respected within the anti-Western bloc. The implications run far deeper, though. First, this is an awakening to the West. The Western nations have long believed that Africa would always be within their sphere of influence. They ruled with military assistance, backing, and soft power. But all of this is rapidly changing. The African continent is shouting out, selecting friends, and in the vast majority of instances, rejecting Western forms of governance. Second, the action sets a dangerous precedent. North Korean troops can invade Burkina Faso, and the world does nothing. So why not do the same in Mali, Niger, or even South Africa? It raises questions of sovereignty, regional security, and proxy wars on the African continent. Already, French and American agents are reported to be following developments closely. Sneak attacks, heightened drone monitoring, and even economic sanctions are being spoken of. But it might be too little, too late. Traoré is winning over the people of Burkina Faso in bulk figures. His popularity rating is still overwhelmingly high. And now, with North Korea as a backing, his power is still more. Let us not forget the big picture. Burkina Faso belongs to the Sahel States Alliance, and so do Mali and Niger. All of them have experienced their quota of military coups in recent years and are aligned against one common enemy: French neo-colonialism. They are all building a new Pan-African alliance which seeks security, development, and freedom outside the Western fold. This alliance now has military connections with Russia's Wagner Group, economic connections with China, ideological and religious connections with Iran, and North Korean war strategists. This is not troubling Traoré. This is troubling a new axis of the world being formed, an axis of resistance. The question is, how will the world respond? Already the world media are downplaying it. Western media are quiet on North Korea's penetration into Burkina Faso, either through ignorance or fear. But behind closed doors, the move is causing destruction. NATO officials are called to emergency sessions. AFRICOM is considering options. France is insisting that ECOWAS act, but in vain. Some analysts believe it will trigger a bigger war. Some believe it's an interim alliance, driven more by political ideology than by actual strategic needs. Either or, however, there is no question about it. This is a turning point moment. Africa is no longer a chess piece on the board of global geopolitics. It's emerging as an active participant. And it's Traoré who is taking the gamble. He's staking everything on a new radical vision for his nation. He's willing to challenge the West, put himself at risk of being subjected to economic sanctions, and now invite one of the most controversial regimes in the world into his country. Whether this gamble succeeds or goes to disaster, only time will tell. It's impossible not to be in awe of the courage or risk. As the world moves into a new multipolar age, the battle for control of Africa is only just heating up. And North Korea entering the fray is a signal that this battle won't be fought by diplomats nearly as much as it will be fought by soldiers, by bullets, and by coalitions that blur all we ever thought we knew about international power. So what comes next? Will the West respond militarily or diplomatically? Will regional actors intervene? Will North Korea try to project influence into other African nations? Or will it be a one-off? Whatever it is, the world waits. Captain Ibrahim Traoré has changed. North Korea has responded. While the rest of the world was startled by the revelation that North Korea had deployed its troops to Burkina Faso, their audience might have been doing so all along. The reality is that North Korea has been flying under the radar, reaching out to Africa for years. From covert diplomatic incursions to cultural exchange initiatives and clandestine military cooperation, Pyongyang has been probing Africa, wooing friends, trade, and influence. So why did they recruit Traoré? Because he is all that North Korea adores about a foreign leader. Anti-Western imperialism, willingness to upset the apple cart, and a rock-solid, quasi-ideological devotion to national self-determination. Traoré, in significant part, is the revolutionary values once represented by North Korea in the Cold War era, and still mimics today. To North Korea, Traoré is not merely an ally, he's a symbol. But this new alliance is symbolic only to a degree. It's also a matter of survival. North Korea is desperate to break out of its international isolation. Sanctions have ravaged its economy. China, its erstwhile largest ally, cares about regional stability, not ideological devotion. Russia, aligned as it is preoccupied with Ukraine. So Pyongyang is looking south to Africa for diplomatic space to breathe. And that's exactly what Traoré offers. As a quid pro quo, it is reported that Burkina Faso gave North Korea access to natural resources, manganese and gold. Official reports cannot confirm, but some reports in the intelligence community and independent researchers suggest that mining concessions were already granted to Pyongyang-related firms, which would not be limited to raw hard currency provision to North Korea, but also give them an interest in the West African resource wars. This is significant because Burkina Faso, as much of the Sahel, is rich in minerals. But years of Western hegemony have resulted in the majority of those mineral riches ending up in the hands of foreign corporations, not locals. By negotiating with countries like North Korea, Traoré is essentially flipping things upside down. He's doing this. We will decide who benefits from our Earth, not France, not the IMF, not the World Bank. Of course, this is a risky stance to adopt. Burkina Faso is already experiencing mounting economic pressures. Western aid has been trimmed, loans have been withdrawn, trade routes are being subtly threatened, and rumors are circulating that Western intelligence agencies are propping up opposition forces in a bid to destabilize Traoré's government from within. But the young leader will not be swayed. His speeches have become more extreme. His friendships are more intimate. And his popularity, at least for a while, endures. The Burkinabe are tired of being poor in a world of abundance. They're tired of years of ineffective development programs. And they see in Traoré something they have not seen in years: hope. But there is not always honest applause. ECOWAS, the Economic Community of West African States, has denounced the foreign fighters, including those from highly sanctioned countries, such as North Korea. The African Union has remained silent, perhaps not wishing to officially take a stance on a conflict likely to split the continent. The UN, on the other hand, appealed for dialogue and restraint, but did nothing in terms of concrete actions. The silence is deafening. It creates a new reality. The old international diplomacy gatekeepers no longer have that much power. The UN, NATO, and ECOWAS, all good institutions in the past, are losing momentum as countries like Burkina Faso forge their own paths. In this new reality, legitimacy no longer lies in international institutions, but in sovereignty and popular consent. This brings us to another key observation: the new youth movement on the continent. Young Africans, especially Francophone Africans, are becoming more political, more radicalized, and more Pan-Africanist. Twitter is saturated with Traoré-supporting hashtags, French-bashing sentiments, and the dream of an autonomous Africa. North Korea's action in this context is not seen as interference from outside, something different, something negative, but as solidarity. That is a striking shift in mood. Foreign intervention in Africa has long been suspect, and rightly so. There is the colonial European heritage, the American military interventions, the economic traps set by international lending institutions. These have created deep scars. But when a country like North Korea gets involved, then it is another thing. It is not one of imperialism, but cooperation, at least to the extent that Traoré's lieutenants envision. Yes, there are no individuals who purchase this hype. Critics contend that the sending of North Korean troops to Burkina Faso is a risk-filled endeavor with danger. They point out that North Korea possesses one of the worst human rights records on the globe. They warn that Pyongyang's intentions are not as benevolent as they sound, that it sees Africa as an influence playground, not as a friend. They may be right. After all, North Korea is not known for its selflessness. It is always eager to do so, but with a price tag, political loyalty, economic gain, and military clout. Traoré needs to be careful not to trade one dependence for another. There remain some, nonetheless, who believe that the risk is worthwhile. Because at last, for the first time in decades, Burkina Faso, and by extension, the entire African continent, is on the offense, and not defense. Traoré and his allies no longer ask permission. They demand respect, and they're backing up those demands with action, tough, geopolitical action that is reshaping the game. So where does it all go? Others predict its comeback as a new era of Cold War-style proxy wars on the African continent. That the continent is once again about to be a battleground for foreign nations, not just its classic Cold War adversaries, the US and Russia, but China, Iran, and now North Korea. Others see this as the beginning of Africa's long-promised political awakening, a time when the continent emerges from foreign control at last. Whatever it may be, there's one thing for sure. The dynamic between North Korea and Ibrahim Traoré is more than a headline. It's a sign. It's the end of an era and the beginning of something new, something untested, and perhaps something revolutionary. The question now is, what will the world do about this new rough relationship in the making? Washington is already in heightened alert. The U.S. Department of State issued a diplomatically worded denunciation of all foreign intervention, most notably those undermining democratic institutions and international peace. The mention of North Korea was not there, but the implication was clear. Spy agencies are reported to be monitoring messages between Pyongyang and Ouagadougou, and analysts are beginning to connect the dots between what can be an emerging trend in strategy. In a secret session, an American official had labeled it a potential flashpoint for a West African tinderbox. From a military standpoint, the planners caution that small North Korean units are a threat to inflating already volatile situations in a region teetering on the brink because of jihadist uprisings, political instability, and a wave of anti-Westernism. This is, though, the West's embarrassing truth. Their power is declining. Sanctions have not killed North Korea. They've only made it get more resourceful. Desperate, yes, but also more volatile. And when it comes to Burkina Faso, the nation has nothing to lose. Western intervention for decades has never been able to pull it out of poverty. Corruption, failed governments, and chronic insecurity have long bedeviled it. To the average Burkinabe, the question is not why Traoré is working with North Korea, but why no one did it before and rocked the system. Traoré, in some ways, is the product of the system collapsing, the fracturing of democracy to produce results, the fracturing of neoliberal economics to make lives better, the fracturing of global institutions to treat African countries as equals. So when a figure like Traoré stands up and says, "No more," he is not simply standing up for Burkina Faso. He is standing up for millions of people across the continent who believe they are gagged, excluded, and disenfranchised. And now he has something more than rhetoric in his toolkit. North Korea's theoretical or symbolic alignment gives him credibility. The military maneuvers, arms deliveries, or even the mere psychological advantage of foreign soldiers waiting in the wings to defend his regime Traoré is making a statement. We will not be intimidated. Some believe that confidence might be misplaced. Regional heavyweights Nigeria and Ghana are becoming more and more restless. As ECOWAS's big players, they don't wish dominoes to fall. If Mali proceeds with normalizing relations with Iran, what then? If Niger imports Chinese private military companies, what then? If Guinea follows Traoré and starts nationalizing foreign property, what then? The specter of a regional realignment is enormous, and it's frightening traditional allies to their very foundations. France, colonial master here for so long, already has a role of shame to its credit. Its troops have been pushed out of Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. Its companies are losing ground. Its embassies have been stormed by protesters. The very foundations of France's dominance in West Africa are collapsing. And now, add North Korea to the mix? That's a kick in the face geopolitically. The reaction in Paris has been one of panic and denial. Officially, the Macron regime still insists that France remains dedicated to partenariats basés sur un respect mutuel et sur des valeurs démocratiques. Behind the scenes, however, French officials are desperately re-strategizing. For decades, they employed a mix of economic coercion, deployment of troops, and political pressure to keep their thumb on the region. But that playbook is now stale. Africa is no longer France's garden. It is an ideological battleground, a field of ambitions and new alliances. This is probably why all the analysts are in consensus that the West's next move can be insidious, not blunt. Open military intervention would be unpopular and risky. Instead, we are likely to see increased support for internal opposition, information warfare, or even economic sabotage. Burkina Faso's fragile economy is wide open to even the slightest disturbance, and Western powers are aware of it. Ibrahim Traoré is, however, doubling down. Reports suggest that he is attempting to build a broader bloc of resistance across the Sahel. There have been talks between Mali, Niger, Guinea, and even Chad military commanders. The goal? Create an autonomous regional bloc independent of ECOWAS, the African Union, or the West. If successful, this could be the beginning of a tectonic shift in African geopolitics, a rebirth of Pan-Africa. This time, it's not led by liberal intellectuals in academia or diplomats in Geneva. It's being led by soldiers young, militant, and staunchly anti-imperialist. And for better or worse, North Korea is increasingly becoming their unlikely ally. Let's take a step back and think about what that means. A secluded, authoritarian East Asian government is currently helping shape West Africa's future. It's an odd alliance, certainly, but it's also a test of how far the world has moved. Old alliances are crumbling. New unions are being forged. Ideology, once declared dead, is rearing its head again. And at its heart is Ibrahim Traoré, a 36-year-old politician who 2 years ago was hardly known beyond Burkina Faso. He is now a symbol of defiance, a lightning rod for criticism, and perhaps the most talked about individual in African politics. The future is uncertain. There will be pressure, further propaganda, even maybe attempts on his life. Everything is riding on this, and the forces mobilized against Traoré are vast, but so too are hopes placed in him. To many, he represents a last hope, a final stand against generations of foreign predation. And that North Korea should now stand alongside him only helps to fuel the fires. Whether or not this coalition will be able to survive the tests ahead is as yet unknown. But this is for sure. The world chessboard has been rearranged, and the next steps will not only decide the future of Burkina Faso, but also the future of global power. If you've stuck with us this far, you're a fan of independent thought and reality-based content. Help us keep doing this by liking, sharing the video, and subscribing to the channel. We have more stories to share that will shake what you believe you know about geopolitics and global influence. Until then, remain acute, remain questioning, and keep questioning the narrative. Don't forget to like and subscribe.